Welcome in. It is April 17th, Monday, and here we are again, Mandy. How are we doing today?
Omani, I'm so excited. There's something cooking that I want to share.
Okay, do you want to share it now or do you want to wait?
I want to share it right now. Can I? Can I
Okay,
share?
yes, go ahead and share. Yes, go ahead and
Okay.
share.
I didn't get your approval to share this, so if I'm saying something I shouldn't, just I guess cut me off or hit mute or something.
Mhm.
But we've had a bunch of planners and a bunch of people ask us to take this Adventures in Business show live on the road. And
Okay.
so we have our first gig and it's coming up. I can't quite say the location or anything yet, but our first gig of Adventures in Your Meeting Live, where we do what we do here every week, but we're actually doing it on a trade show floor or in a foyer space of somebody's actual conference. So I'm super stoked about that. I know you and I have a lot to talk about it, but I'm really excited. It's
I'm
happening.
like,
It's happening
what?
in just a
Who?
month
When?
from
Where?
now.
How?
Yeah.
Okay, a month from now. All right, so that's
Mhm.
exciting. I can't wait to get
Yeah.
more details. We are
Me
growing. If you're watching in the audience or watching the replay or live and you want this for your conference or event, just make sure to contact us. We'll let you know how to do that. Now, for today, Mandy, I would love to know who we're talking to. I think we're going to have another lively conversation. So I'm going to let you lead him from the green room into the stage. And who is it that we're talking to today?
Okay, we love this guy. So this is Mike Georgopolous. We know him as Mikey G. He's the M behind RMD. He's a dad. He's a successful nightlife and restaurant operator. He's got a guy for everything. He occupies pages 45 and 46 of my book. And to
Okay.
say that he has a myriad of adventures in business is an understatement. So we want to welcome Mike Georgopolous.
All right, welcome. Here's your applause, Mike. Here we go.
Right.
Is that loud
That was a good
enough?
one.
Okay,
There you go.
I'm here. That was a good one. Thank you.
We're excited to have you here. I think whenever we talk to people who work in like the restaurant space or the hospitality space, I'm curious to know if you could think of maybe one of your favorite stories of maybe a guest that came to your establishment, maybe an establishment, anyone that you've managed, and that initially they were maybe they were a little bit upset or salty, but you turned it around. What comes to mind?
Ooh.
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good question. We've had many, many salty guests that needed to be turned around. We had a visit from Ashton Kutcher back in the
Okay.
Fox days, and I don't know if he was salty, but I don't know if you remember, but it was all over the press worldwide, and he was having a not so great night. I don't think he was in a bad mood. I think he was just trying to be under the radar. He had a hood on the whole time and stayed pretty quiet and tried to stay out of the limelight. Then he made friends with an employee of the female sort. And then they decided to leave and go off to his hotel, which became pretty public. She was supposed to hide her cell phone and didn't. And they had a great night, and he had a terrible week after. So I'm not exactly sure that's what you were looking for, but it was the first thing that came to mind on the spot there. So I guess
Okay.
I guess he had a great time and we turned it around, and then he had a really bad time with the press for the next.
That's a
next few
story
weeks.
for you. I love it.
That's,
Okay,
that's, a,
that works.
that's a roller coaster.
Yeah, it was a roller coaster for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll tell you my favorite story of the nightclub days, and it's not it wasn't a guest who was unhappy because he was having a good time. Didn't even show up. So we had our opening night of Flux nightclub, which is here in San Diego, and we had booked Snoop Dogg for our opening performance, grand opening night. And the way that sort of works, in Amani, you're a DJ, so you kind of know this world. In the hip hop space, it's a little different than EDM, and it's a little different than rock, and it's a little different in country. So you go and meet the artist or somebody from his team. You pay them, and he shows up and does a performance. Well, so our guy went to pay Snoop. I think he was at SDSU, if I remember, one of the colleges. He was in his trailer, and he was high and didn't want to come out, and decided that he wasn't going to perform or show up. So here we are in our club opening night, made a big deal about Snoop Dogg coming to perform. So it's about midnight, and the guy that we sent, Mike, came and said, hey, called, he's not coming. And we're like, what do we do? And it was probably one of the greatest turnaround stories of all time, because we huddled. I remember myself, Dave, and Big Game, we huddled in the kitchen of Flux and tried to figure out, okay, what are we going to do? Now, on the one hand, we got a full club and we're making money, and we saved, probably at that time, $40,000 on Snoop. So we decided that we were going to make an announcement and own it and say he wasn't coming. We were going to make it an open bar for an hour, and we were going to bring a bottle of Dom Perignon to every bottle service table. So we sort of simultaneously made the announcement, had all the champagne come out, and opened the bar. And there was an instant groan at first, like, we're sorry, Snoop's not going to make it.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of a groan. Then it was open bar, and for all of you at the bottle service table, here comes a parade of champagne. And the place went crazy.
Oh
and
my God.
we built so much goodwill from that, and really turned it around. People had a spectacular night. And that wasn't even the best part. The best part was Snoop felt so bad that he spent the next 5 years repaying us for that. And what I mean by that is, we booked him, I'd say probably 10 more times over a couple different venues. And he went extra out of his way and really gave us value for every booking as a result of not showing up. So the thing turned out to be the best thing that ever happened. But for about 30 minutes there, it felt like the world was going to crash on us.
Oh my God.
Nice recovery.
I don't think I knew that story. What a great, only you could recover like that. I mean, that is a beautiful golden story. That's spectacular.
Yeah, that was a recovery at its finest.
Oh, I love that.
Well done. Nice
love
job. If we fast forward to today, in the kind of current time era we're in, post-COVID, where it's very challenging to hire and sustain and keep, good associates. What are you doing to kind of get through that and really still stay at the top of your game with regards to your associates and employees?
Yeah, great question. That is the challenge. I think it's evolved. So if you ask me 6 months ago to today, I think it's slightly different, and in our favor. It's a little better. I would say 6 months ago, it was hire anybody you can, build systems. You ever go bowling with your kids and you put down the bumpers, and you almost every time you can hit a pin. Well, we put the bumpers on, and we created systems that, what I would say is a less experienced employee could function in our system or in our program. So we would rely more heavily on the managers to pick up the slack. We would create systems and processes that made it dummy proof, I guess would be the best way to put it. And that's how we lived from, the end of COVID to about 5-6 months ago. Then things started to come back around, and better employees started to show up, more employees. We had more choice. We're not held as hostage by our employees. So now we're in the phase like we were for the last 18 years of our business, which is um, take care of the people that are doing a good job and that we want to keep. So how are we doing that? It's a lot of things. We are big on like staff outings and sort of events. That's sort of one of the things that has created the culture at RMD. So we're getting back to our roots and we're doing more big staff events. I mean, we've done, the big all company event where we go to Big Bear and take over a hotel for 3 days, and we've got 300 people on the mountain, all the way to we just did a recent one for Johnny Wahoo Golf Bar where we did a little paint and sips class. So we closed the restaurant, the staff came in, they did painting, sipping wine and beer. And so I think the events are a key part of what we do. And then the other thing we've been focused on, I'd say in the last, again, 6 months, is back to and more training. So more wine training, more spirits training, giving people an opportunity to grow and learn and excel. And I think people are really into that. And then the last thing I think that's probably going to be the most important, like in any business, is you need a cause, right? You need something to strive for. It's not just to make the owners money, right? Nobody gets excited about that, except the owners. But so now it's about it's about recognition. It's focusing on awards and recognition so that we can instill some pride. So where we've never really been big on going out and trying to win awards, we just sort of always hope that we get the ones that we deserve. I think we're probably a little more focused on trying to be present and mindful of when awards are coming up and letting our staff know that we want to win this and here's how we're going to win it and get them excited. And then most importantly, celebrate when and if we do either get the nomination or the actual win. So I think those are some of the things that are helping today. But man, it is changing month by month right now. And for the better. It is better today than it was yesterday. We're not quite back where we were, but we're getting there for sure.
And I think I love all this. So I'm going to say it louder for the people in the back, right? This is such a problem in our industry right now. It's like this guy and his team, he's setting up training, he's creating bumpers, creating systems, and involving everybody in the contest. I think these are really good takeaways for people out there that are struggling still, because there are still people struggling. But what I think is one of your superpowers is your interpersonal skills with each employee one on one. I mean, I have seen this from you over the years as people adore you. They love working with you. They love working for you. You somehow create loyalty, and that's really hard to do. So I know you just gave a broad stroke of the big things, but for you personally, like who you are as a person, what are some of those key things that make you do what you do and make and really establish loyalty? Like, what are some things that you're like, I will always do this because this is really important and this has kind of worked personally?
So good, great question. So, Mandy, when we were together, right, I was little less layers between myself and what I would say associates, as Amani said, or line level staff. So, back then I was our term is we're in the headset, we're in the earpiece. So that meant for us, the guy on the floor who's actually running the night. And back then it was direct communication with every employee from dishwasher all the way up, right? And constant check-ins, constant communication, both on a professional level and on a personal level, getting to know the people, whether we're out at an event and I'm getting to know somebody or whether we're in the workplace. Today, as we get bigger and there's layers, that I apply that same thing to the managers, and in hopes that they're applying it to the staff. So some of the sort of things that have to happen are if I'm not involved in a manager hiring, meaning I didn't do one of the interviews, then I must meet with them within 3 days of their start date. And because of scheduling and travel, sometimes, I like it to be the first day, but within 3 days, 72 hours, I want to sit down with that manager. I want to talk about the position they were just hired for, what the expectations are, not so much what the expectations are from them to that we have for them, because the manager who hired them already went through that, or the director. I want to explain what they should expect from us and from the company, from me personally, and from my team. And those are things like making sure they have the tools to do their job, making sure that they get paid on time, making sure that if they had a career, they came on as an assistant manager and they want to become a manager and they want to become a general manager, that path is laid out clearly and they understand the steps to get there. So I'll make sure in the first 3 days that I have that conversation, ideally in person. Again, if it's travel and I have to do it like this, I will, but ideally in person. Then automatically goes in my calendar as a 30-day check-in. I think right about 30 days, we know what we're getting and they know what they're getting, and we need to make sure those things are aligning. And I've gotten to a 30-day, I'll talk to their direct manager or director and around 30 days, and I'll say, hey, I'm going to check in. How's things going? Oh, things are going great. He or she are so happy. We're happy. Great hire. Then I get to the person and you start peeling that onion and you start to realize there's issues. There's things that they're having trouble with. And sometimes you can resolve them and sometimes you can't. Sometimes the position we hired them for is not the right one and we can make a quick pivot. So ideally at 30 days, we're really cementing the relationship, making sure that I understand that they're getting what they need and we're doing everything we said we were going to do. And then I will do sort of the last one at 90 days. And I think once you get to 90, if things are in motion and things are happening the way they're supposed to, we have a pretty good chance that things are going to work out. Now, I'm going to see them all the time. I'm going to be in meetings that they're in, but that's sort of 3 days, 30 days, 90 days to me is the most critical. So that's every manager in the company. So that could be, right now that's probably about 40 something employees, and making sure that they're set up. Generally what I get somewhere in there is I work for a lot of companies. I've never even spoke to the owner and worked there for 3 years. And now it's been 90 days and I've already seen you multiple times and we've had 3 direct sit downs and communication. Because what I want, and Mandy, you know this about me, I'm an East Coast guy. I just assume say it like it is. And I don't want to hide how I'm feeling. I want to let you know you're doing a good job or there's opportunity for improvement. So I really want to build a little bit of trust and a little, have a little understanding of each other so that when I do walk in and the lights are too high or the music's too low or the hostess isn't in the right uniform and I say something, it's going to come across the way I want it to, as opposed to being like, man, who's this guy who never talks to me? And now he's barking at me because the lights are too bright. So it's important for me to be able to set that up too, so that I can walk into the venue, make a comment and not feel like I got to be really careful and walk on eggshells, because I don't do that very well.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I mean, it is so powerful because so many organizations, not even just in hospitality, so many organizations are not having these touch points. And I really believe, I know that is your superpower, but I want to go back for a second just to share with everybody, what is RMD? How did RMD start? We know you're the M of RMD, but tell us about that piece and how you founded it and how it's developed over the, geez Louise, 18 years.
Yeah. It's been 18 years. So I guess I'll go way back. So I moved to San Diego with Starwood Hotels, which is how you and I first met. And I was doing the hotel thing at the Sheraton Harbor Island, and you and I had our moment in the basement.
Yeah, we'll talk. We're going to talk about the basement in a little bit. Yeah.
And by the way, too bad we didn't have that for COVID, right? We could have fell back during COVID and saved from those germs.
I know. That's right. That's right. Something good could have come out of those germs.
So I was here, it was interesting. So we were selling events, myself, Mandy, the whole team. And I had this little EMM market. So I was sort of running around trying to be scrappy, trying to find ways to make my goals while all the big cheese salespeople were taking all the prime dates, prime selling dates, right? And open, what was it? I couldn't sell anything until like 30 days out.
Oh, freestyle.
Yeah, freestyle. Thank you. So what I was doing, I don't even know if you know this, maybe you do. What I was doing was I was booking my little events, but then the event planners were saying to me, hey, we want to do dinner, but we want to do it off property. And rather than just giving them a list, I was going and helping them book small meetings, 20-person, 30-person dinners at various restaurants in the Gaslamp. At the time, though, there was nobody really selling events. It was an untapped market. So you had all these restaurants, not as many as today, but you had a decent amount of restaurants and nightclubs in the Gaslamp. And there was one person, her name was Sin, who was selling events, and nobody else. So if I wanted to book somebody at a restaurant, I had to go down there. I had to find a manager. I had to make the arrangements. Then I had to show up again because they were gonna forget or not communicate to their staff. So I had to be there. So all of a sudden, I'm doing this side hustle more as a service to my clients, not to make any money. And I'm booking all these dinners, and I'm like, man, this is really untapped. Like, most hotel people are just kind of forcing you to stay on property and use generally a subpar hotel. Although we had El Fury, which was awesome.
Mhm.
So I met these guys who had just opened a nightclub in the Gaslamp through a friend, and I started telling them what I was doing and how I wanted to sell their space. Well, that guy James wisely said, well, why don't you just come work for us? And you can be that sales guy and go out and get all the hotels to bring us business. So that's how I got into the San Diego nightclub scene. Fast forward, 3, 4, 5 years later and 7 concepts later, they decided they were going to sell that original place I went to work for, which was called Sidebar. And so we decided, myself and at the time my partner Rodrigo and Dave, my uncle, we decided let's buy it and let's start our own thing. So RMD originally was Rodrigo, Mike, and Dave. And Dave is my uncle, and Rodrigo was my mentor in the nightclub world. He taught me everything about nightclubs.
Rod the Bod, good old Rod the Bod. Yeah, he's awesome.
So that's how RMD started. We opened Sidebar. We reopened Sidebar and expanded footprint with a new remodel. And then Rodrigo decided that many years later that he wanted to pursue. He has a passion for fitness. He was a professional swimmer and was really into fitness. So he decided he wanted to open a gym. And at the time, we were talking to my other uncle, Dan, who's Dave's brother, about joining the team anyway. So we sort of made a switch. Rodrigo went out and Dan came in. So the RMD didn't really work anymore because there was no more R. So we had to change the acronym to Real Motherfucking Deal. That's all we could think of.
That's great.
And here we are. So we are at first, the base of our business is we own and operate restaurants and nightclubs. Today, mostly restaurants. We've had different nightclubs and restaurants over the years. The other part of our business is consulting. And we've flexed up and flexed down on consulting depending on how busy we are and what's happening. Originally, consulting sort of fed the need for newer projects and more exciting and an opportunity to teach people things that we've learned. The managers in our business, their primary thing that they love is to teach and to show people and mentor people. And a lot of times after you've got your own business up and running and things are humming along, there's always tweaks. But, you start to lose I want to really teach someone the things I've learned over the years. So consulting was an outlet for that. It's grown to be a much bigger thing now, and it's a big part of our business. So we'll do management. I'll give you some examples. Like Hard Rock Hotel. We're embedded at the Hard Rock Hotel. We've been there for a long time, thanks to Mandy. We'll never forget that phone call. And we've been there 7 years now, and we operate all the food and beverage and all the big events. So we do a big pool party every Saturday. We do a big New Year's party for 4,000 people. And then, we've been at the Hard Rock. We've been at Ballast Point, operating their, assisting them with a rebranding of their tasting rooms. We've done, we've done a lot of different things over the years in and out of San Diego. So consulting and sort of our own management is sort of what we do.
Okay, so I have to ask a question. As a DJ at my core, I got to ask a question on behalf of the DJs. When you think about all the DJs you've worked with, what are some of the best characteristics that really you're like, now that's a good DJ? What do they do? How do they operate? Give us some inkling, because I know you've got some good experience and information to share, and I've just been chomping at the bit to ask this question.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a good question. And I think it really depends on the level of DJ and what the venue is, right? If you're booking somebody who's over $10,000, right? The only thing you ask of them is they show up and stay sober and do what they do,
Mildly sober, yeah.
right? Because they have a brand, they have what they do, and I'm not going to tell them what to play or what not to play. The majority of what we book, especially on the restaurant side, is obviously far lower scale in terms of pay. I'm not skill set. And in those cases, we're trying to create a certain vibe, and we're trying to create a certain experience, and we're reaching out for them to fit a need that we have. So I may call you and say, okay, I have this restaurant, and here's what I don't want hip hop, or I don't want swears, or I don't want, I want to keep during dinner, I want to keep the energy level here, the BPMs here. And then you can start to ratchet it up at 9 o'clock. And then you can do whatever you want from 10 to 11. Whatever those parameters are, just stick to them. We all agree on what they are. We follow them. And then you stick to them. What a DJ tends to do, because they're artists, and I get it, is they either get excited because one person in the room is sort of bobbing and moving, and they start to play to that person, and they start to go outside of the parameters that we set, or they just didn't listen and don't care, or they're not aware, right? Like, so one of the things that happens a lot is volume. Volume is an issue with every DJ I've ever dealt with in my life, because you're deaf by nature, because you've been sitting with music blaring in your ear for your whole life. So what happens is I'm trying to set the volume in the room to a certain level based on what's happening at the moment. And the DJ is cranking up the monitor, which is blaring, sounds terrible, and blaring in the room. So the volume starts to go up. So that's generally our first issue, right? So I'm like, hey, man, you got to turn the monitor down. Turn the monitor faces you, doesn't face out. Stop turning up the master. We got to maintain a volume level. Oh, no, it needs to be louder. Dude, I'm in this restaurant every night. I'm creating the experience. You're here to help me do that, but you're not going to tell me. It's the first time you've been in this restaurant. You can't tell me what the volume should be. So to me, the best thing a DJ can do, again, not a superstar celebrity DJ, because they're going to do what they want. And honestly, you're paying them to do what they want, right? But if we're partnering together to try to create a certain vibe, then we need to have a plan, and we need to stick to the plan. And by the way, if you DJ for me regularly, which most people have been DJing for us for over 10 years, okay, I want to hear what you're the expert. You're in the market. You tell me where I'm wrong. Maybe I've got my information wrong, but let's have a conversation. It's a team effort. And we need to gel together, because I'm out there selling a certain experience. And then if you're not delivering on it, it's a problem. So I think having good communication with whoever it is that's running the floor and sticking to the plan. And if you get a wild hair and you feel something like, hey, I feel like we could go here, just call the manager over and say, hey, I think I can. I know you said 10 o'clock to ramp it up, but this place is going off. How about I start going now? And I'm like, you know what? Thank you. I was dealing with a POS issue. Didn't even realize it. Go, man. You're the man. Make it happen. But we got to have communication. It's not the DJ's way only, because there's a whole other thing going on that sometimes you don't see from the DJ booth. And then, like I said, volume is my biggest pet peeve. I've mentioned now volume twice already in this show.
I think it's more than twice. Yeah. Yeah.
But I will say this, though. I ran into some the guys from Sleeping Giant, Freddie Fresh and Chris Cuts. These guys have been DJing in San Diego for over 20 years, 25 years, and for us for over 20 years. They both were in the DJ booth at Lumi about a month ago, and I just happened to be walking through, and I ran into both of them. And of course, I got us all a drink, and we're yucking it up and talking about how old we are, and we can't believe we're still doing this. And they said to me, hey, we've got some equipment issues that are falling on deaf ears to the management. And I was like, dude, I handled it right then and there. And I'm like, if you guys ever have a problem with equipment, you let me know right away and I'll handle it. Manager's doing what he's doing. He's trying to slow play expenses and trying to manage his P&L, and I get it. But I also understand that if you want a high performing DJ, you got to give him the tools to do the job. Mm-hmm. So, you can't have a busted mixing board, or all kinds of connection issues, or you don't have the latest software downloaded, or whatever kooky stuff people the monitor doesn't work, so then there's this little tiny little monitor. Like I said, you guys are deaf. I know you need your monitor. So or having just old, outdated firmware, whatever it is. So yeah, I agree. You got to have everything dialed in and tight. And I believe that in every aspect of your business. Like I used to be, but I'm not a screwdriver guy. Like stick the screwdriver in it and make it work kind of guy. Like I used to do with my cars. You got to have things that you want to operate at a high level. You got to have high level equipment and gear. And I bought these guys everything they asked for.
Great. Message for the DJs. I appreciate it. Now, my next question would be for the students. Both Manny and I teach. I teach at Cal State University Fullerton. Manny teaches at San Diego State. We have young professionals that are entering the industry, and I find that many of them are scared of working in restaurants because of the hours and the intensity of the work. Specifically, kind of the newer generation. I think it's Gen Alpha. I think that's the proper term for them. What's your message to them about some of the benefits and how working in, food and beverage and restaurant can be just fun and life-changing?
I think I see that 100%. And the things that I sometimes hear these younger people say, I'm shocked by. But I'm aware that I'm an old school guy, and we did things a certain way back then, and these kids are not going to do it that way anymore. That's just the reality of it. So I think what I would say is, I think there are a lot of us in the restaurant space that are progressive, and I think we're changing the way we do things to accommodate this new type of employee. But there's a lot of restaurants that are not. They're stuck in the old ways. They got hazed as managers, and they got put through the ringer, so they feel like they finally owe it. I've met a lot of police officers that I'm like, man, you got picked on, and now you feel like you're going to pay it back. I got some very good friends that are police officers, and I'm like, guys, I get it. You got picked on. You don't need to pick on anybody. And some of the managers and some of the owners are the same way. So I think you've got to find a company that is moving with the times, and who they understand that, people that excelled in the restaurant industry 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it was their life. And that was me, right? I worked for somebody else. I put my entire life into it. I put my life on hold, and I put everything into the restaurant or the bar or whatever I was working for. You're not going to get that anymore, or not largely. There's a few people. And I don't think that should be the expectation anymore. I think we preach balance, and it's people say it all the time, balance. Actually, I do believe that those people who are very balanced in their life perform better. I do truly believe that. I do think you need a few workhorses that have nothing else to do but really, get after it every day for your organization. I think you need to compensate them and pay them accordingly. But I think you actually will get a better result with balanced employees. I'll give you an example. I'm in the restaurant space. I took a general manager to dinner recently. So another thing that's important to me is every GM and chef and above, I got to at least go to dinner with you and your significant other and my wife, Michelle, ideally at least once a year, ideally more, but at least one-on-one once a year. I think there's a lot that when you break bread with somebody at a restaurant that's equivalent to what you're trying to accomplish, I think sitting over a meal and talking about what's working and what isn't is very insightful. And what I learned from this particular meal was this person hadn't been to any restaurants that I expected he would have been to already in San Diego. Why? Because he's working all the time, and he's not making time for that. When he gets off, he's using his time for other reasons. And that's another reason why I really try to force these dinners and make them happen. So I think when you want to get into this business, I think you need to love it. I think you need to make sure that you want to be in this space. And I think you need to work for an organization that is thinking more modern and less rear looking. The other thing I find too is this: just commit. I've got a lot of people right now who I would make them managers, and they would be pretty far along in their career, but they're still waiting for the real job. Well, this isn't what I'm going to do. I went to school for this, And this is,
Yes.
and I said, dude, you've been in this for 10 years. You're a natural. You love it. Just commit, you know? And so they just kind of holding out for that real job. So I think we've got to, as a community, restaurant community, we got to do a better job of making people want to be us. So I tell my managers a lot, well, look at you. You're running around crazy. You don't get out to nice restaurants. You don't take any time off. You have no balance. Why would any of your people that work for you want to be you? You don't make it
Mhm.
look cool. You got to make
Yep.
it look cool and sell it. So that's the biggest one. Biggest opportunity I see. If you want to, we want to bring some new people in. I think we got to make the job look better than it. Well, make them realize how good the job can be. When I had my first kid, I was probably in my class of owners and managers. I was probably one of the first to have a kid. Then I had a second kid, and people started coming to me and saying, "Hey, you can really have a family and a normal life in this business." And I said, "Yeah, absolutely, you can. You got to be disciplined. You got to balance, but you can do it." And now I got my third on the way. So I'm hoping.
Congratulations.
Did you not know that?
I saw it on I thought it was an old post or something, but I wanted to ask you. I was going to ask you offline, but I love that it's right out
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
It's
we're
great.
not big
Yeah.
on announcements. We don't do
Yeah.
Michelle and I, I'm like, we didn't really announce this in any particular way.
Oh,
So,
congratulations. It's
yeah.
awesome.
So, Marnie, I hope that answered your question.
Excellent, excellent answer. That's the challenge, is presenting working in hospitality, especially restaurants, in a more appealing way so that we attract younger talent. So absolutely, you answered it right. Um, I'm going to defer to you, Manny, because I have another
Yeah.
question that I've asked two in a row. So go ahead.
Well, I want to keep building on this balance because it's so easy just to work our brains out in this industry. And you are a dad, right? You are a husband, you are a friend, you are a family member. What are some tips and strategies that you do in your daily life that help you maintain that balance?
Mhm.
I think a few things. Well, this is going to sound opposite of what we're talking about, but I am very committed to my calendar. If it's not in my
Mhm.
calendar, it doesn't happen. So what's important to me is in my calendar is also my balance time, right?
Mhm.
So as an example, I have a poker night once a month. It's in my calendar. It does not get moved. It doesn't get overbooked. Once in a while, there's a few people that book into my calendar. They say, "Can you move poker night?" Nope, I cannot move poker night. Um,
Mhm.
the time I spend with my kids, I take my son he's newly into soccer, so I take him to soccer practice. You know, I go to the soccer practice. He has a coach. He goes off for an hour. I can make phone calls and check email. I'm there. I'm there. Most of the time I'm present. I'm watching what he's learning, and then I use the time before and after as our time. So we'll go get pizza. We'll stay. Usually he wants to stay and work on whatever the coach showed him. So I'm there playing soccer. So
Mhm.
so my tricks are put it in the calendar, because if it's not in the calendar, it doesn't happen. And I try not to move any of the personal social stuff. So, um, I'm and I like to make, like this morning. Okay, I'll give you a perfect example. My mom, myself, and Michelle, we're all online this morning on Ticketmaster because there's a big soccer match coming to Snapdragon, and the
Mhm.
tickets got released this morning, and so we're all in there because I know I buy those tickets. My two sons, and I are all going to go to the game, and there's a whole day. We just went up to LA for a soccer game, so
Mhm.
I try to schedule. I'm a crazy
Mhm.
scheduler, so I
Mhm.
just own it. So I schedule a lot of balance or personal time. I'm taking my boys. We're leaving Saturday. We're going to Boston for 5 days, just us.
Mhm.
Will I sneak in some work and some phone calls? Of course I will.
Yeah.
At night, in the morning, while they're sleeping or while they're on their iPads. But I can do both. Once we're together and we're doing an activity, I'm not the guy on the phone. But before we go or when we get back or whatever, I'll find the time. So my trick is to schedule things and to pack in my calendar for future scheduling of things that we're going to do together, or that's going to be time, or with my wife. Her and I, so my wife and I, we have the best. We wake up at about 5:30 in the morning. Everyone's still sleeping. We go get coffee. We drive down to the beach and we just hang out, and we sit in the car and we watch the sun come up, and By the way, you'd be shocked at how many people sleep in their car at the beach. It's very
Fun fact. Fun fact.
it's crazy. Like a lot of people are sleeping in their car at the beach. Very eye-opening to me. But yeah, so that's our time. We get that chunk of time and we make sure it happens. It's probably happens 3-4 days a week. So scheduling is how I do it. Long answer.
I love that. It reminds me of Jesse Itzler. Do you know who Jesse Itzler is?
No.
He's I'll send you a link to him, but his whole thing, he has this club called the Build Your Life Resume Club. His whole thing is plan your life before you plan your meetings. And it's like, plan out all the stuff you want to do with the people you love before you plan out the work stuff, because the work stuff always is going to happen. It's always going to invade if you let it, but it's the personal stuff we forget to plan. And when you plan that out, you just have this much more balanced, more enriched life. So I love that. That's really awesome.
Yeah, and you know what? I will say this, and I know this might sound a little bit cheesy, but I only bring this up because my mom just asked me about this recently. I don't work. I really do not feel like I work. Every once in a while, there's something I have to get done or I have to do that might feel like work. But truthfully, I've been very fortunate that I love what I do. Because have my own business, obviously that allows me to have certain freedoms that maybe somebody that worked, like when I worked for Starwood, I didn't have, right? Main reason why I left Starwood is I wanted to get that damn suit off. And I didn't want my tie pulled all the way up to my throat.
Yeah.
And so I do not feel like ever, very infrequently do I ever feel like I'm working. And so I think that really does change things a lot, at least for me, is because I know I can tell you two obviously love what you do. And so when you do that and you really do enjoy what you're doing, I mean, it's all fun. My son said to me, this is the best. My son's, he's 8. I think he said it when he was 7. He said, in front of my entire family, we're in Boston and my partners who are there, and we're all talking and he's got a big personality for a little guy. And he says, loud as everyone can hear, my dad doesn't work. And of course, my two partners, my uncles, look over like, oh, tell us more. He does not work. All he does is goes to restaurants and tries the food, and it's mostly his restaurants. And then he just tells them how to fix it. And I'm like, you're right, buddy. You're right. You're right. I do not work.
That's great.
Yeah, nailed it.
The kid perception is so great. I love that. Oh, that's hilarious.
So now we're to the portion of the show where we kind of like flip the script, as we say, and we allow you to ask myself and Mandy one question. It can be any question you want, and we will do our best to answer it as best we can. So
it came so quick. It came so fast.
I was just going to say, really? It's already.
I'm like, I still want to talk about the basement.
What?
We're kind of making our way through. I have to keep us on time,
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Thanks, Amani. Amani's keeping us balanced. Yeah.
So I guess my questions are I guess are going to be slightly, not a lot of thought, slightly generic. So I guess this first one I'm going to ask you, either one of you feel like you can answer it. I'm intrigued. Okay, so this is the first podcast I've done. I did one other podcast, but it was Peter Greenberg, Eye on Travel, but it's a radio show, but he refers to it as a podcast, so no video. So I guess that was officially my first. That one drops on Saturday, by the way.
Awesome.
So I'm really curious now that you guys are in the podcast game. How do you feel about it? Is it more time commitment than you expected? Are you getting what you wanted to get out of it? I'm very intrigued about podcasts. It's been recommended that I do more, and thank you guys for inviting me on. So I'm just really intrigued by what you feel about how it's going.
I'm going to defer to Amani. No, because I'll go first, but Amani's been at this longer than I have. So we're going to have vastly different answers, which is great. This is great. Okay. So, I've always been, when my book came out, that was what the PR people were telling me is just get on podcasts. So I actually went on a podcast tour and I was on all these podcasts, but they were all recorded. And that's when I developed my love of podcasts, because I was like, whoa, it's long form. You can actually have a conversation. And then the sound bites were really awesome to repurpose for marketing, like that content, and that repurposing is awesome. Like, Mike, after this show in a couple weeks, you'll get some sound bites and quote boxes that you can use however you want for your own personal branding or your company or
Oh,
whatever.
cool.
So I liked that. I thought that was really cool. And I learned a lot from each podcast that I was on as a guest. I learned a lot. I'm like, oh, I don't like this. I do like that. But what this show has done for me is this is live. And
Mhm.
I felt like when I was recording these podcasts, I felt like, oh, is my hair good? What's my background look like? All this stuff. But the live element is like anything can go wrong. And we did not know what we were doing. In fact, we took a really bold move and our very first show, our test show with a test guest, we did that live because we're like, you know what? Not a lot of people are doing these live streams. These are really, really important. We're just going to show how the sauce is made. We're going to lift up the veil and be like, hey, we don't know what we're doing, but let's just show you what's happening. And so we did our test show live, and I like the authenticity of it. I also like this live show. We'll have all these different people in the chat, which is great. But the rewatch is where the magic is because so thousands of people rewatch it. And then you can repurpose all the content. So, like this show, pretty soon is going to be up on Apple and Spotify and Stitcher. So, not only is it this live show that's on LinkedIn, we repurpose it. It's on our individual YouTube channels. We repurpose the clips for marketing for our guests and for us. And then it's going to be on this more global platform. So I love it because I think there's just so many uses for it. I think it's a really awesome business card, but it's also for me, like I get to talk to my friends that come on the show. I get to
Yeah.
meet new people. Like the show we had this past week, I never met her before, and I developed this big, huge girl crush because we both love Oprah. Like so I just think there's no downside to it, whether it's live or whether it's recorded. I just think you just got to do it, and it doesn't have to be perfect. Just do it, try
Yeah.
it, and do it. And then somebody else told me, a good friend of mine, Sean Welshef, who he now has 3 podcasts, but his first podcast was Digital Hospitality, and Entrepreneur Magazine actually eventually picked that up and represents that for him. But he also has Restaurant Influencers and another one, I can't remember. But he just interviewed Emerald Lagasse. He's had Dan Dryduck. He's had these great guests, and it's just consistency. So he says
Yes.
by the time people get to the 25th podcast is when people normally quit. If you can get to 25, you can soar after that. And he's kind of a case study that shows that you can. So those are all kind of like my thoughts on this space. But Amani, what it
How close are you to 25?
I think
uh
this one will be like our 18th or 19th. I want to say we're
yeah,
Oh,
closing
we're
in. Yeah,
close.
we're
Yeah,
close
we're
there.
close.
Yeah, we always forget.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, to add to what Mandy said, like I just love live streaming because it's a very interactive way of talking to you and talking to people in the chat, and it's very different. Podcasts are usually like recorded and then you can listen to them there, but live just adds another element, the video element. You can see the people, you can see us laughing, you can see us kind of bantering, engaging, our facial expressions. Plus, I think that this form of content is like the modern day form of networking. Like it's very, very intimate. We're having a conversation. Like we're going to remember the story about like you going to the beach in the morning and you seeing the people sleep in your cars. We're going to remember the story about how you tell the DJs to turn down the volume, manage the volume. Like those are things we're going to remember because it's like really, really intimate. We're going to remember the story that we're going to hear soon about the basement at the Sheridan. But a lot of times when you talk to people, it's when you're networking at like an event, you don't have these kind of memories. And
right.
so this really creates like a connection. Like I'll remember like the sidebar. I'll never forget. Like you were there at the sidebar. I've been there. I've had friends DJ there. So it just creates these little memories that you'll never forget. We had someone else a few weeks, about a month ago, to talk about you must always drink a lot of water. And what did I do here? I got my water here with me. There, that. She told us we have to go on walks after dinner. What did I do yesterday? Went on a 30-minute walk after dinner. Like it's just those little pieces that you pick up and you adopt that are really nice. And marketing, I think it's like Manny said, it's a big business card. I think it's just a great way to market yourself, but it's subtle. It's not in your face. We're really being of service. We're allowing you to share your story so that you can talk to the people who are maybe interested in working in restaurants. Like, oh, it's not that bad. Mike has a family. He goes on vacation. He does things that doesn't seem as bad as I thought it would. So really we're being of service too, which I really love. So that's our answer to that question.
That's great. And Mandy, when you were talking about redistributing the content, my friend Wayne Partello, I don't think you've met Wayne. He's
Mm-mm.
owns Quento Marketing, one of the founders. And he has a saying, and he says, shoot once, distribute many. And he's
Yes.
always talking about just, hey, let's just get this content, and then we'll break it up, and we'll send it out into all the different social networks and whatever. So that one's always stuck with me because it's right. You can use it for so much more because you have all this now valuable content. Well, that was a
And
good answer.
And there's so many programs out there too right now that, if like Trent, for example, is this great program that is listening to what we're recording and then they're repurposing that into a blog post. So there's so many great ways to repurpose just audio into words. And then, through the words on the blog post, then you've got your instant metadata, you've got all your SEO, and all you did was record 1 hour, and then you have months and months and months of content that you can repurpose. So yeah, I'm down with your buddy Wayne too. In that
So
camp.
before we ask kind of our final questions, please share the story of the basement at the charity. Just so you're aware, Mike, I grew up in hotels. I did sales in DC, Atlanta, Chicago, Dallas, Miami, LA. So I grew up in the same world. EMMs, I was an EMM before.
Yeah.
Big group sales. So I understand. I want to hear the story about the basement.
Okay, Mike, do you want to tell it? Or do you want me to tell it?
Mandy, you tell it. You wrote it so good. You wrote it better than I could have remembered it.
That's so great. Well, so I have the story and a question flanks that too. So, okay. So the story of the basement. Mike and I were salespeople at the Sheraton San Diego 20 plus years ago. And we renovating our sales office. And so they put all the salespeople into this one room. Well, it just happened to be in the winter. Everybody was sick and it was a disgusting germ space. I'm a germaphobe. Mike's a little bit of germaphobe. And he and I are both like, let's get the H out of this disgusting like germ foam, this germ zone. So we went down to literally the basement of the Sheraton and it felt like a broom closet. We found this little broom closet that we started working at, just he and I, right? It was like this pact of like, if anybody sneezes, we go back to the germ zone. So we're in this little broom closet working. And while we were there, Mike has always had really innovative ideas about how to sell the hotel, and whether the hotel leadership was smart enough to take that on or not, that's a different story for another time. But so all of a sudden our brains are buzzing and we're writing like ideas and notes and all this collaborative stuff on this wall in this broom closet where we have all these ideas for our market. And I think for me, that was the first time we're like, I love collaborating with this guy. Like, I'll do anything with him. And then months later, he left to go work for Sidebar and then, opened Stingery. So then when he had a position opening up a year later, I'm like, yeah, I don't know what we're doing, but let's do it. Let's game on. So the basement sort of started that. But I want to ask you a question with that, because I feel like you've always been innovative. You've always had big ideas and you've always sort of made something out of nothing, right? So like, where does that come from? Like, did somebody teach you this growing up? Is this just, are you wired this way? Like, where does that business acumen and insight come from?
I think it's funny because it's sort of the joke around the company now, right? That like, oh, here we call them crazy ideas now. So here comes the Mikey G crazy idea. And, once in a while, people are like, oh man, that actually might work. I think it comes from when I was a kid. I was, where I grew up in the neighborhood I grew up in, and wasn't the best part of town and not the best people surrounding me. And so I think I started out kind of shady. So I think my mentality was a little suspect and it was a little shady, and I was generally more up to no good than good. I think I always had a good heart, and I don't think I ever wanted to hurt anybody, but I think I was always scamming. I think scamming is probably the better word. So as an example, my friends laugh about this a lot. I had these, I think I got it from the different people around me. I got this pile of Batman t-shirts when I was probably 13, and some shady way, they fell off the back of a truck. I didn't steal them, but somebody did. And I had this giant box of Batman t-shirts, and I was out selling Batman t-shirts on the corner while I was selling papers. They used to sell paper standing in the middle of the median. That was me, the guy with the newspaper. Well, I started doing I was allowed to be there for the newspaper. It was legitimate. But then I had these Batman t-shirts. So I think I just always was sort of looking for an angle or looking for a way. And then over time, it developed into trying to make a buck. So I had
Mm.
my first business was I used to shovel driveways and do all the usual stuff that kids did back
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
East, right? Shovel driveways, cut grass, it was all for the love of food, by the way, mostly pizza. I just wanted to make enough money to get a pizza, right? That was all that mattered. Okay, once we got enough money for a pizza and a meatball sub, we're good. We'll stop for the day. So I think it just sort of developed from there. And then when I was working in the hotel business and I came to San Diego, truthfully, what happened was I was sort of I was a catering sales manager in Boston, but at the hotel, the catering sales team had the clout of what normally is reserved for the group sales team, right? Because it was a very big catering hotel. So I was cool. Then I come to San Diego and at the Sheraton, and they didn't even have a job for me. It's a funny story how I got there, but we'll probably run out of time. But they made this EMM job for me. There wasn't even one at the time. And so now I'm having to like fight for business and make stuff up. And quick story, Mandy, is there was three pieces of business that I really fought for. One was Booz Allen, and it was a very unconventional piece of business that turned out to be huge for the hotel. But
Mhm.
you had to have 10 meeting rooms to be to fall into my EMM, and she was
Mhm.
all catering, and the catering team there was very strong. And so I was sold her guest rooms as meeting rooms. 10 breakout rooms were in, and I said, "Hey, this is an EMM now," and that's how I got to keep it. But the other two were the San Diego Boat Show and Gator by the Bay, and
I
those
mean,
two events are still happening.
yeah, and
But
it started with Mike. Like those
they
were
did
you
not want to
fought
have either
so
one of those.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
the hotel was like, no, 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 no. And I fought and got creative and, did a profit analysis and, was relentless. And now those two events still happen. So I think it came from being a little scrappy as a young kid and maybe getting in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah.
That's good for all of us. That's good for
That's
all
a
of
great
us.
story. I
Yeah.
myself would shovel snow. I grew up in the DC area, so I would shovel snow. I had my own lawn mowing business, so great minds.
Yep.
Now, for like our final few questions, I'm really curious about how you're gonna answer this. But if you could go back to right after you graduated from high school and you're about to kind of get started in the hospitality industry, if you didn't even get started before then, but give yourself advice based on everything you've learned so far in your career, what advice would you give to younger Mike G?
Great question. I did start
I thought so.
long
Yeah.
before high school.
Yeah.
Man, okay. Well, I guess it's the advice I took accidentally, didn't realize it was the right thing to do. I got behind really good people. So in one of the places that I learned a lot about this business and how to treat people, most importantly, not only people but supply vendors. There's a
Mhm.
school of thought out there where you're mean to your vendors and you holler at them and you treat them like garbage
Yeah.
and you try to get the most out of them and you squeeze them and squeeze them. They're partners and you got to treat them right. And I learned that. So I worked for this guy. His name was Mike Fambash. He ran a restaurant called MJ's. One of the first. It was my mom worked there as a waitress, and then I kept going there for free food. And the guy's big Harley bearded Italian guy used to call me Harry. Called everybody Harry until he liked you. And he'd say, Harry, stop coming here and eating on your mom's comp tab. Although he never charged my mom. You need to start washing dishes and earning your keep. So I would go down, I'd wash dishes, and then he'd feed me. But anyway, I ended up becoming working for him, and he taught me a lot about how to treat people and the right way to run a business. So and then many years later, I worked under another guy who was a little more analytical thinking. Oddly, he was Greek. So the Italian guy was sort of had one sort of way, and the Greek guy, and I'm Italian and Greek, so it worked out great. The Greek guy was an engineer for Raytheon who bought a restaurant, didn't know a lot about how to treat people or how to run an actual restaurant, but he brought like a science and math. And this business is all about math. I mean, this
Mhm.
business is math. And he taught me that. So I got behind two really good people, and then many people after that over the years. So um, I would say, don't worry so much about the title, the position, or the money. Worry about what you're learning and what things are getting ingrained into you, and work around really good people because those skills are going to be the basis whichever way you go. And so I think I've met managers who I've lost who like they're gonna it's like an athlete who goes for the payday,
Mhm.
or you're Tom Brady and you stay with your team, you don't get paid what you're worth, and you win a million championships. So I would say stick with a team in the beginning, stick with a team where you're learning the most, where you're getting your good values are being expelled around you, and you're learning the real essence of this business, because this is a people business at heart, and then there's the science of the business, right? Running the actual financial side of the business, and you got to learn both of those. Even if you're a great artist and you're a terrific chef and you're all about making great food, you still got to make money. So I think mentorship to me is super important, and I would forego the paycheck to be around good people who are going to teach me the right way, and then eventually it'll all work out.
Amen.
Boom, mic drop.
Oh, I
Awesome.
think that's a good
Just-
segue to maybe so great advice. As we come to a close, what's the best way we can support you, both Manny, myself, and our audience, people watching the chat? How can we best support you and help you continue to grow?
I'm looking for a restaurant in Encinitas, if anybody knows one for sale.
There you
That's
go.
good. Yeah, you got to throw it out there.
I
Yeah.
want to open a rustic root in Encinitas. I would say this. It'll be dovetail off the last thing. People ask me all the time, how many more restaurants are you going to open? And I say, I'll open as many restaurants as I can find good people. So if anybody knows somebody who truly wants to make a commitment to this industry, who wants to be mentored, who wants a team of individuals to share everything they know, and I mean that truly, everything we know, and we'll pour it into the right people, then come work for us, because we're always hiring good people and we want to be around good people. I don't care where you are in terms of skill. I care where you are in terms of attitude. And if you can, then come work for us and make something of yourself in this industry, because it's a great industry and it's the best job you could ever have, because it doesn't feel like a job.
Amen. We're gonna put the applause there for that one right there. Thanks again. It's been a pleasure. We're gonna shift you back to the green room and close up, but just amazing stories, lessons, wisdom, just very valuable. So thank you very, very much for being another amazing guest.
Thanks for being here. I know you have not a lot of time, and spending an hour with us is a gift. So thank you, thank you, thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you both for having me on. It was awesome. And it went fast. Wow.
Yes,
fast,
time
yeah.
flies. Time flies. Okay, Mandy, we are back again next week. Do we know who we have next week? I'm trying to check the calendar. I'm not quite sure. Who do we have?
We've got TJ Void next
Okay.
week.
All right.
Yeah,
good,
we
good,
got
good.
TJ Void. He has a podcast about fatherhood. He's an author. He is in real estate. He is a content creator. Super interesting person. And I'm excited I don't really know him that well. I'm excited to get to know him more.
We're going to get to know him in the chat. And if you're watching live or the replay, thank you very much. Feel free to continue to leave us comments, share it with a friend. We just have so much fun doing this. So thank you for your time watching and commenting. We will see you all next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.